Okay, so today's story is Echo and Narcissus. Um, Narcissus is the main character. He is this hot guy who has a tragic life. It starts out his mom brings him to see a prophet when he's like a baby, and and they did this all the time. They'd bring them to a wise man or a sage or even a king sometimes, and they'd be like, "Say something prophetic about my child." And the prophet is like, "This kid has it. Like he's hot, he's going to be wealthy, he's going to be intelligent, he's going to have everything you need for a happy life. And he will have a long life, so long as he never meets himself," which is weird. Um, so I mean, he doesn't meet himself. He never sees a good reflection of himself. There's in that era, you have to understand they didn't have mirrors just everywhere. They did exist, and a lot, and like rich people had them. You know, you have the story of Medusa, and the Gorgons and stuff like that, where it's like someone used a mirror, so that existed, but it was very very rare, and you didn't just run across your reflection all the time like you would nowadays. Um, so Narcissus actually never sees a reflection of himself. He doesn't know what he looks like. However, he gets a pretty good idea that he's a very attractive individual because everyone likes him. He It talks about him being pursued by boys and girls and how he kind of takes his pick and he never falls in love, but he lets himself have a very good time. So Narcissus is not actually a character that I respect. He's a character that has a really sad story. But he's also very well known and he's a reference. You'll have noticed already the connection between Narcissus and narcissism. Um, and it's narcissism is hailing back to this story because everyone knew it. So in his travelings, Narcissus sleeps around, and one of the people that he ends up with is actually a nymph named Echo. Now, Echo has an interesting backstory. She used to work for Hera, as in like Zeus and Hera. She was a nymph, so she would have had more contact. But yeah, so she used to work with them. Well, she was such a big gossip, and just like she was a talker, and she always said everything. And she was gossiping so badly that Hera actually was like, "You know what? I'm done. You cannot do this anymore. You may only speak the last words off of the lips of someone else. You can't make up your own words anymore. You don't get to just decide what you're going to say. You only get to repeat what other people have just said to you." So that's Echo. And Echo falls in love with Narcissus, very much in love. Narcissus never reciprocates. He uses her, but he does not love her. Um, but she gets a little obsessive, like fangirl over this guy, and she actually follows him. So she turns into a stalker. This is how stalkers are made, my friends. Um, yeah, and she's really not. I mean, when you think about it, she's not that good of a character. I mean, she's a huge gossip, and then she's just like a I don't know busybody, and then on top of it, she starts to stalk the guy that she actually likes. Like it's kind of sad. Anyway, I already said that Narcissus was super attractive, and actually, the descriptions of Narcissus are that he was almost womanly and how beautiful he was. It's a different way than guys were typically beautiful in that time. In that time, it was like Apollo, like sports, athletics. That was attractive. Sound familiar? Um, but Narcissus is very fine featured and very thin and just feminine almost. And it makes me think of anime, like anime guys. So that's kind of how I always pictured Narcissus. Anyway, so we have Narcissus followed by Echo, and Narcissus is going around doing his thing. So Narcissus finally one day, he's walking around and he finds a glade in the forest, and inside of it is a pool. As he leans over to this pool to get a drink, this pool is actually very dark at the bottom and very smooth and calm on top. So, guess what he sees for the very first time in his life? Narcissus encounters himself, his reflection. Um, Narcissus falls in love with himself. So he like It's not clear whether Narcissus really understands that it's a reflection or whether he actually thinks that there's someone down there that he's trying to get to. At first, it really kind of sounds like the latter. And he talks to the reflection and stuff, and he says things like, "I reach out to you, and you reach back, and I can see the love in your eyes. You must love me in return. So there's mutual love here." But he's frustrated because every time he actually, like, he reaches out, and the other one is obviously willing, but as soon as he touches the surface of the water, it causes ripples and it breaks up the reflection, and he loses the guy. And then, but if he waits long enough, he comes back, and so it just starts to drive him crazy. And Narcissus starts to go crazy, and he won't sleep, he won't eat, he won't anything. He's pining away over this reflection, and he's leaning over and he's talking to it, and he, like, at one point he's like, maybe I'm gonna die this way because I can't get away from you. And he's like, maybe I'm probably gonna die if I stay here. And he's like, but gosh, I would rather die here than escape with my life and always be haunted by you. Um, Now, while this interaction is going on, Echo comes up behind them, and she's actually kind of in. It kind of makes it sound like she's off in the bushes or whatever, just watching. Creeper. Um, but so as he's sitting there driving himself mad, and I would assume this took a long time, but Narcissus does begin to die, and he becomes sallow and thin, and he starts to die. And as he does so, he speaks to this guy that he's in love with, and he's like, "I love you, my darling boy. I love you." Um, and his words, his last words, are actually caught up by the nymph Echo, who takes them, who takes his last words and repeats them back to him, to Narcissus. They're the only things she can say, but beautifully and remarkably, they are exactly the words that she wishes to say. Um, so as he says, "My darling boy, I love you, I love you," Echo repeats, "My darling boy, I love you, I love you," and he lays down and he dies. Um, and they never find his body. She goes back and tells people that he has died. People come up and they're unable to locate it. But what they do find is a little white flower that's leaning over the edge of the pool, and looking at its reflection. Some versions have it as a stone, but the most common one is the flower. And we actually, to this day, still have a narcissus, which is a little white flower. It's very pretty. So there you have it. That's the story of Echo and Narcissus. Absolutely tragic, but also absolutely romantic and beautiful. And there's something about just how it all worked out that really kind of catches you. It's also a very common one. That's a reference. That's one that most people know, or at least they know a bit about it. That's one where you get a couple of words that we use now. So, narcissist, comes obviously from his name and was a reference to the story. Echo was the same thing. So that it's a fairly useful and a fairly common story. So, but it's one of my favorites. I will talk to you next time.